Three, two, one, pop.
Bob.
All right. Well, welcome back to Jammed, episode 2, the only number 1 rated podcast named Jam that has nothing to do with jam. Uh, Today, I think, Alex, you had a topic that you wanted to jump on. You want to take the lead?
Yeah, so recently, there's been a lot of games that have been coming out lately. So things like I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge came out this month, and other types of games like Streets of Rage 4 and hell, even like spiritual successors such as that one game that looks like Link. He's a fox. It's called Tunic, which I've tried a little bit of last night, and I will have to say it is you gotta play it. Like, but the thing is, I'm not sure if it's like actually, the old games are just better, which is why they're remaking it, or like just nostalgia glasses.
Oh, did you get the Xbox Game Pass, by the way?
I did, good sir.
Nice.
Currently on June 25th, 2022, Xbox Game Pass is $1 for 3 months. Xbox, sponsor us, please.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. But yeah, so you were wondering whether or not it's like nostalgia glasses or if it's like legitimately good.
Yeah, because we're getting to that age where we're millennials and the older end of millennials, and like, are we just like people who liked games when we were kids now have the ability to make games? But is it just because we played those games as kids, which is why these things that have very similar themes are better? Or are like is because we played as a kids, or are they actually better than a lot of AAA games that come out these days?
Right. Oh, quick note. I think the oldest millennial now is just hitting 40.
Okay, so we're in midway.
Yeah, I guess.
And I think I agree with you that a lot of the millennials who are making games now are thinking of like the old games back in the day, and it is a little bit of that nostalgia, but also I think it's a little bit of disappointment of seeing a great game we saw in the past that hasn't with each rendition of it, like let's say Final Fantasy, one of the most popular ones, Final Fantasy 1, and then as it progressed, it's just not feeling as the stories aren't getting better. They're just not as what's the best way for me to say this? As developed. Yeah, tropey. I feel like a great example I would feel is Octopath Traveler. If any of you have played it, it's like an ode to Final Fantasy.
I think Alex played
Yeah.
it.
I played a little bit of it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna like. I'm not sure if we're gonna go in the direction of the story. Like, the story is all right. Just like each of them have their own separate story, and then they pick up to other people along the way. But they each sort of have their own individual story. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you are. So they just keep on going through all these different stories rather than, I feel, some games in the past made a cohesive story altogether. Like all their stories like related at one point or converged. And also Octopath Traveler just has a very unique compared to compared to Square Enix's past games, I feel. They tried a different approach, which I think was fresh, but I think the issue is that there's still so much nostalgia, and the gameplay. Now jumping into gameplay, it seems like there hasn't been any quality of life changes or that would make things of an old game feel better.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was gonna like when you were talking about stories converging. Like, the sad part is Squaresoft did sort of do that before. Like, I'm not sure how well versed you are in like the Secret of Mana series, but Senken Densetsu 3, which is I think Trials of Mana in English, is Derek, you played the old SNES version, right? Like, it's like you pick three different characters in the very beginning of the game. One's the main character, and the other two you just sort of meet along the way, and their stories actually merge together to sort of like. So you can pick random of like there's 6 characters, you can pick any of them, but like your main party is those 3 people you pick in the beginning, and all of theirs somehow tied together.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of agree with you that it's been a little bit done before. I also kind of agree with Michael that I guess were you trying to say like they're trying new things, and they may be hit or miss nowadays, Michael?
Oh yeah, like I completely think with the example I had earlier is Octopath Traveler. They tried something new, but the problem is that they didn't execute it well enough to make it feel extremely memorable. Like the memorable thing is that they did something weird rather than the story, which I don't think is extremely memorable at all.
Yeah, so I have my own theory, my own take on this entire thing, and it's kind of comprised of a couple of factors. So back in the day, during like the gaming boom, I guess, everybody was trying to pump out quality games. They were trying to, I guess, put new things in there, games that would separate it from the rest of the massive amount of games coming out. I don't know how retro you may be thinking, but I think back then they had a lot more leeway with what they kind of want to put into their games. These days, there's so many like metrics where people are like, oh, do you sell? This is what you need for your game to sell. This is, you absolutely need this mechanic. You absolutely need a hook in your storyline in order to keep players engaged. But I think that just kind of either makes things stagnant, so they don't change up or introduce more mechanics into games nowadays because they're afraid that it won't sell and it'll be a big flop, or it becomes incredibly convoluted where they try to put too many things in there and it becomes kind of a mess. I don't know if you guys may disagree with this, but Final Fantasy 13 was kind of a mess for me personally. It was like they were trying to do too many things in one game. They were trying out new mechanics. The storyline was a little bit all over the place. And they were all doing this for the sake of trying to get new audience members, bring back old audience members, try to hit certain factors which will create a quote unquote great game, but it may just miss. And I think this is kind of like reflected in movies too, because you see a lot of people using, I guess, or rehashing old ideas to make new movies. Like reboots of the Ghostbusters, just off the top of my head. And they're trying something new with the whole new cast, for a whole new audience, but it may not hit. So I think in the game industry, when they're rebooting games or rehashing ideas, it's a safe method because it's a tried and true thing. Back in the day, it was pretty popular. Like, they're redoing all of the older Resident Evils, and a lot of them were popular. I don't really know the popularity of 1 versus 2 versus 3, but they remade 1 a lot because it's a classic. It's great. All the mechanics, they didn't have to change anything up. They just have to make it look good. And I think that's kind of both nostalgia glasses and also because they were good back then. So there are some things that don't really change. The storyline was kind of simple. The controls were kind of terrible back then, but they worked. They worked for the game, the environment, the ambiance. And so, I don't know. I think to me, personally, when they're rehashing, rebooting these games, it just kind of means that those retro games were good. Like, it's not just nostalgia glasses. there are definitely some things that are nostalgia glasses, such as what is that dragon game where it's like a on rail shooter, but you're on like a dragon and you're like shooting everything. It came out for the Sega console. You guys know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about Panzer Dragoon.
Yeah, that one. So people raved about that game back in the day, but it doesn't hold up now. It's a super short game, not a lot to it. And while it may have been new in the past, it's really, really simple in these days, like in terms of these days. So certain ones definitely nostalgia glasses, but I think a majority of the remakes, a majority of the retro games that are being brought back, they're tried and true. Like, it's a safe option for developers, in my opinion. They know that it'll sell because not only because of people like us who are in this age group who played it, enjoyed it, but also because it just worked, I think. What do you guys think?
I think that you do hit on a lot of good points. Back then, yes, the mechanics weren't as clean as they are now or developed as they are now. I think for me, the part is that these new games that are coming out are trying to hit that nostalgia like feeling, but they aren't doing it justice almost. One game that I definitely can say is something that doesn't a lot of games try and hit this kind of like benchmark is Final Fantasy Tactics. It's a PS1 game, great story, great mechanics, but all these new rehashes of that game or try like almost like games that are inspired by it don't hit that that like sweet spot for me. Also mainly because, like you said, there's so many requirements on games now these days, things that you can or can't talk about. Final Fantasy Tactics hit a lot of darker themes and topics that a lot of individual or gaming companies probably would not touch due to backlash from communities and stuff these days. So like one of the most, there's so many games that are like it. I can't name so many off the top of my head, but there's like Fae Tactics. Anything that has the word tactics in it is a game that I feel tries to be like Final Fantasy Tactics, but can't reach that level of enjoyment or story, I feel.
Well, I'm kind of curious, Michael, because I'm just guessing. I don't know if you actually played it all the way through, but because you were talking about Final Fantasy Tactics, what kind of made that game a really good game for you? You touched upon story, but did any of the game mechanics also stick with you? And what do you think, like, the difference between what made Final Fantasy Tactics great versus a tactics game nowadays? Like, you also mentioned that there are some things that companies won't touch nowadays because maybe it won't be received very well by the audience. But is it mostly storyline for you then?
So it's a mix of both. I feel like Final Fantasy Tactics, definitely the job system that they have was so intricate and in-depth and has such strong possibilities for the player to explore it, is what made me fall in love with Final Fantasy Tactics. And then the story had a very critical eye of religion. There was indiscriminate death in the game, which it was a very realistic kind of world. They built a world, Ivalice, that had themes and individuals who would die as a casualty, not as a strong component of the story, but it's a more darker, realistic idea of the world. Like, there will be things in this game that will happen for no reason sometimes because that's what the world is, rather than, oh, we're going to purposely kill this thing to progress the story. An animal, a child, stuff like that would not fly very well, I feel like, in these days if it was put in the game. And I feel like Final Fantasy Tactics also kind of gave that gritty realism where this is a world, this is a living, breathing world, which made me feel, even though obviously RPGs, stories like that are railroading you in terms of like, you gotta go this route, but it still made the game feel very alive. I think that is something that I enjoy a lot. There's the game I was thinking I played recently, completely, was Triangle Strategy. Amazing game, but there wasn't a job system, which kind of made me disappointed. But the plot was okay. It was not amazing. I enjoyed the plot, but it wasn't something that I feel was original or even as provoking to me.
Have you played like Disgaea? The Disgaea series?
Oh yes.
How do you find that?
I feel that it's interesting because it's not. I think the anime, like the super anime kind of like feeling, kind of pulls me out of getting extremely invested, and also the penguins really kind of break that seriousness for me. But I think it's still overall a pretty good game. It's just not something that I feel made me feel like hit that itch almost.
Right. I think I get what you're saying. There's another tactics game I'm kind of wondering if you played. Alex played this one. I forget the name of it though. Alex, maybe you'll be able to help me with this. It's the game where you are sent back in time. You are in charge of a bunch of robots against a bunch of insects. It's a tactics game. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Do you remember the console?
Into the Breach?
Yeah, Into the Breach.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one is also, that's an indie game that's like super like simplistic in its storyline, at least as far as I played. I didn't finish the game, but the storyline is all about you coming back in time, trying to prevent this kind of catastrophe with giant insects. A lot of strategy involved. What did you think about that one?
I think for that one, I loved the mechanics. Story, I think even the creators were like, the story's just secondhand. Let us pour everything into the mechanics and the versatility into the mechanics, which is what I think made the game very enjoyable. Story just was very meh. And also it's a roguelike. So it's one of those things where I knew the story was not going to be extremely on the forefront, but the mechanics was just, I feel, was very fun, and I completed it 100% it, and it was something that made me feel, ooh, I'm using my brain a lot, which it was very, I just think overall it was just very enjoying because they focused so much on the mechanics.
Right. Alex, what do you think about this entire thing? Not just about the tax game, but the topic that you brought up. What do you think? It's mostly nostalgia, since we didn't really hear what you had to think about that.
I think that there's multiple aspects about this. So I think what you're discussing about earlier was that back then when the gaming boom did happen, there wasn't a couple of things. Is that we sort of got used to a lot of these stories. Now, I'm not sure if we're more not well read, but we did play a lot more games, and a lot of stories are a little bit rehashed. It's mainly just different forms of the hero's journey. But I think that back then they had to take risks because there wasn't a big name in gaming aside from Nintendo for a very long time. So they did have to make a name for themselves. I feel like a lot of AAA games are riding off the coattails of their older games, which is why games like Anthem did very... I guess initially, the first couple of weeks, people were hyped about it, but it's not the same BioWare as it was, in the past.
It's so sad.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's not like the name should carry as much because, like, the developers that did make those games, a lot of them already left, which is why the Square Enix today, when we, complain about Square Enix games currently, a lot of the old developers are not there anymore. So it's not even technically the same company at this point.
Yeah.
And also, I think that, like, how should I say this? You know how there's a lot more awards or people are more into, like, indie films these days?
Are they?
Yeah.
Like,
I have
indie
no idea.
films win more awards, not as in, like, we know about them, but a lot more people hype up about, like, oh, there's more original stories and a more, like, interesting movies from indie films rather than, like, the same action flick of a guy holding a gun all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think that's sort of similar to the entertainment of, like, games these days. The indie games is like the indie films, where it's, like, people who know the good aspects of older games, and then they just tinker with it with quality of life, modern quality of life improvements, and which is why, like, we get good games a lot of time from indie developers. Like, Shovel Knight is like a ode to 2D games and, like, the Mega Man formula with some Super Mario Brothers 3 overworld. Like, Tunic is an ode to the OG Zelda games rather than, like, the modern ones. I think that back then, like, they did have to make a name for themselves. Same thing with the indie developers these days. Like, if they want to make a name for themselves, they have to not only beat the indie rivals, but they also have to compete against AAA games. And the only way to stand out in that sense is to be original. While the AAA, like, studios are just sort of pumping out. They still make good games, don't get me wrong. There's, like, a diamond every once in a while. But, like, they don't have the same, like, they don't have as many hits. Yeah, they don't have the wow factor or as many hits in a row. Which is why, like, every time I see a Square Enix game, I'm like, alright, who's the director? Is it Tetsuya Nomura? Alright, let's get some Kingdom Hearts shit in here then. That's what I'm expecting. Or, like, hell, even Zelda games up until Skyward Sword were all pretty much you're on a on-rails ride. And, it did forget a lot about why people like the original Zeldas. Like, I know that growth and evolution is an important thing for anything so that it stays fresh. But, like, to a degree, Like, after a certain point, there's certain games that I think you can use the same formula or enhance it over and over again. It will still be fine. Case in point would be like Mario. Like, Mario, no matter what, is still about platforming and going to, like, hell, even the story is almost pretty much like Save the Princess with some spice once in a while. But, like, games like Final Fantasy, well, not even Final Fantasy, because each of them are sort of episodic, but after a certain point, some titles or some, like, what's the word called, series should just sort of end and a brand new one should be used. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. Like, I could name one series, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of it, is the Tales series.
Oh, God, yeah.
They just changed the last word. It's Tales of this, Tales of that. But essentially the same RPG, JRPG that you just go through and you kind of like are taken for a ride.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you for a ride.
But, like, yeah, like, the Tales game, I'm not saying that it should end. If people still like that game, that's fine. But, like, have you played Scarlet Nexus, Michael?
I have not.
You should play it. It's, it's like a different take on the Tales game. It's not a Tales game, but there's a lot of similar like tropes, themes, and ideas. So it feels fresh. Like it feels familiar, and at the same time, it feels different because it's like no longer fantasy. It's sci-fi. It's more like it's still anime up to ass. But
it looks like the Shin Tensei or the Persona kind of like series where it's more modern day, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, like use a fresh spin on it. I know that Tales of Xillia and Tales of Xillia 2, it was set in a little bit more of a modern era rather than like Tales of Symphonia.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's every time like it's sort of like you know what to expect when you play a Tales game, and at a certain point, we're sort of tired of the same meal every night. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and that's why I think there's one company that I believe always produces something that is top of the line. That is Supergiant.
Yeah.
Bastion, Pyre, Hades. What? I'm missing one game.
Transistor. Yeah.
Transistor. Those 4 games I would replay constantly because even though they are of the one company, all 4 games feel distinctly unique and unlike any other game I've played. Their level of innovation is just amazing compared to, like we were talking about, the Tactics, the Tales game, the Final Fantasy series, and essentially those kind of series. But with Supergiant games, every single game feels like a new adventure, and I'm always excited for them.
Damn, I honestly thought when you were thinking about that studio before you dropped the name, I had a studio in mind too, and I was wondering if it was going to be the same. It ended up not being, but when Alex was talking about iterations and possibly new IPs that kind of changed the formula, I immediately thought of From Software. Like they all have the same kind of Souls-like aspect, right? Super difficult, but not unfair. You kind of have to learn all of the routes, all of the boss strategies. It's totally doable for everyone, but you just kind of have to put your time into it. They use that and then put it into different settings, different atmospheres to a very good and polished degree. Like the original Dark Souls and Demon Souls, it was all like kind of medieval, dark, and whatnot, right? And then they switch it up with Bloodborne, which is kind of this Victoria age dystopian, not dystopian, but Victoria age, like gothic horror almost kind of thing. And then they go with Shadows. Was it Shadows? No, it's Sekiro, right? Yeah, Sekiro. Yeah. And then I don't know, like each one, you're kind of like expecting the good old familiar feeling of learning, adapting, beating, and getting that good feel of beating it on your own through the time and effort you spent, but they switch it up, and I love that. And I kind of wonder where they're going next with it. I think I also understand what you're talking about, Michael. I haven't played all of the different games. I played Bastion, but I haven't played Transistor or no, I mean, I played the heck out of Hades too, but those are all really great games too, and I think I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, like even with From Software, you bring up a really good point. Like, when you're playing Dark Souls, the series, Demons, all the way to Dark Souls 3, like you sort of know what to expect when you sit down for a Dark Souls game. But then, like you said, we go into Bloodborne. They change the mechanics up a little bit, as in there's no guarding pretty much inside Bloodborne. Like the developer gives you a new world and a new theme to go off of. And I feel like a lot of games from big companies these days just sort of tweak the same world and sort of just tweak like Halo. Like I'm sort of tired of like, and there's all these other iterations like Halo. There's COD, there's Battlefield. Like all the developers just when they make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I feel like that's a majority of what's coming out these days.
Kind of, because they want to bring those people back. But I also think that Halo, COD, even Battlefield, they kind of are like almost a separate genre of games, which kind of has to be taken a little bit differently. Kind of like sports games. I don't know. I don't think any of us are really into sports games, right?
Oh, like Madden and those kind of games.
Madden, FIFA, NBA. There's one that comes out every year. They never change. The only thing that changes is the roster. I think FIFA even makes it so that you can download and buy individual players or something like that, but everything else is exactly the same. Um, these are games that are constantly in a cycle. They're very cyclical, where they don't change anything really. They may add like one or two different things, but it's all about raking in the money. Those are cash cows, kind of. They know it makes money because they have a kind of a hook to them. Like Call of Duty is very arcadey. I don't know. Have you guys played Call of Duty before?
I
I
mean,
mean,
I
if you
played
played
Modern
Halo,
Warfare.
you played Call of Duty. Like it's,
No.
I feel like you play any shooter game, it's like every other shooter game, except with like new weapons, slightly different UI, stuff like that. I don't see. I'm probably insulting a lot of people who are very invested in these games, but I don't see much of a difference between this and like Overwatch and Valorant and all these first-person shooter games.
I think anybody who would be offended may be a little bit too devoted to that game, because what you have an ounce of truth in what you say. They are very, very similar in the fact and regard that you shoot things just in slightly different ways. But the thing that separates Call of Duty from Halo, that separates it from Battlefield, is the hook. At least that's what I think. Call of Duty, since it's very arcadey, it almost has like a casino like feel. You get a headshot, and then you get this like headshot kind of thing. But like while Halo does the whole like uh Kilimanjaro or something like that, uh Call of Duty has like lights. They have these, you know when you win something at a slot machine game in Vegas, you're like, "Oh, look at all the colors," or "Oh, look at all the effects and sounds that makes me feel like I'm a winner." They they have those built into those games, and I think in that way, because it's so cyclical, they kind of expand and improve upon that hook instead of really the gameplay aspect of it. It's kind of like a drug. It kind of makes you come back for more because it makes you feel good. I think those kind of games kind of have to be taken into consideration a little bit differently. Because what we're talking about is are games that are basically in depth, have very good mechanics. Not that Call of Duty doesn't have good mechanics, but like new, innovative mechanics. I don't know if we can really consider Call of Duty and those kind of first person shooters to be in the same playing field that we're talking about. Which,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I think that it's a little bit tough because like when they do make the next iteration, it's not like what do we expect from a sequel to like or another entry in a series? Like I don't know. I think all like I think the biggest thing I want is for developers to try something new. Like what can we expect when someone says COD 6 or something like that? Like what can they actually change to make it fresh? Or like I feel like that's why I say series to just sort of die and just start a new IP at that point. But then that's really risky because, COD makes money.
Yeah, and also since these game IPs are owned by giant corporations that want money and dividends and, gotta distribute those dividends to their stockholders, it's kind of not, oh, what can we bring out that'll interest gamers a lot, but more like what can we do to bring in the most money. So yeah, I think I agree with you on that. It's kind of risky for them to devote a lot of time, money, and manpower to new IPs that may or may not bring in new money, rather than just make another iteration of Call of Duty. It's a safe route, I guess.
Do you think that they don't want to like increase the like they don't want to take these risks because of how expensive it is to make a game these days? Because a lot of indie games, they're not like some of them are very pretty, but they're not like cinematic Final Fantasy, Square Enix kind of dealios.
I think it. Well, okay. If we're talking about practicality, no, you don't necessarily need the same budget that you might see in like the latest Call of Duty game or something in order to make a good quality video game. But I think it's I don't know. Well, if you think like AAA developer, you don't necessarily think 16-bit graphics, especially maybe not for us because we kind of appreciate indie games. Not saying anybody else doesn't, but we our personal tastes. We don't really care if it's 24 or 16-bit graphics or whatever, as long as it has good game mechanics, depth, maybe some storyline. But I think a lot of people, when they think of AAA games from AAA developers and studios, they think top of the line graphics, top of the line like storyline, expansive world that they can go explore. And to a certain degree, I think that they're right to think that because these people do have the money to throw into that. But
But it's a huge risk throwing that much money for something that a brand new IP that they're not sure of.
exactly. And they're not willing to sacrifice something that people are expecting from them because that in itself is a risk. Like, oh, hey, BioWare made a 16-bit game. Maybe that'll cause some interest, but after games that use Unreal Engine 5 and stuff like that, I don't think that's what a majority of the players are expecting. And maybe it's not what they want either. You know how they say like you gotta kind of talk with your wallet? Um I think that holds true here where we can talk all about like depth of quality, um, innovation, blah blah blah, right? But money talks, wallets talk, and what fuels these companies to keep going in the direction that they're going with some of these games is the money. FIFA would absolutely need to change it up if if they started losing sales, but they don't. They just keep making money even if they release the same damn game with just different players the next year. So I don't know. It's a toughie. Like we want new innovation. We want things to change up because I think we touched upon this earlier that we do feel a little bit of some stagnation nowadays. But I don't think that they will change unless either the management are willing to take a risk and devote money, manpower, whatnot into a game that may or may not succeed but has potential due to innovative mechanics or a really great storyline.
I mean, the annoying part is like AAA developers can do that. Like the only AAA developer I know of that's actually willing to take risks on brand new like IP or brand new takes. Well, okay, circle. Like let's rewind just a little bit. Like that is why when God of War, an established IP, went pivoted to a brand new kind of gameplay and route and storytelling, the guy was so fucking nervous, and then when he finally read the reviews for it, like when it launched, like he started crying in his car. Like
Oh god.
it is like it must be the most nerve-wracking thing to put in all that money and effort on a bet. And like the only aside from that game that company though, I think it's Sony Entertainment America, but like still like the IP, the only company I know that's actually willing to try it is like Nintendo. And like let's take example Zelda Skyward Sword to Zelda Breath of the Wild. complete same series, but completely different gameplay and method of like storytelling. Like hell, even Mario, like, is still the same series. He's Jumpman, but with Odyssey, they're like expanding it to all these other kind of stuff. Um,
God, Odyssey was so good.
Odyssey was amazing. I know there's other games
Oh yeah, there's so many games that Nintendo is
willing to try a bet on, right?
Yeah, like Kirby.
Yeah,
Kirby,
the new Kirby game.
They went from they've tried so many different iterations of Kirby to just finally find a sweet spot where it's a good amount of nostalgia and also new mechanics. Let me see, what was the most recent Kirby game?
Forbidden Kingdom. Or Forgotten Kingdom?
Land.
Forgotten Kingdom.
Forgotten Land.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that one, they brought back the N64 where you're able to combine powers, but they were like, let's add a platforming aspect to it like we did with the Mario games. And that is like a 3D platforming experience rather than just a 2D that they normally did for Kirby. And that just made the game just so much more expansive. It felt like they did such great innovation, but they were just taking old concepts and just combining it to make something I think is like a treasure.
Yeah.
So why do you think that Nintendo is willing to make these risks and they succeed rather than other companies who just go with this will make money, tried and true? Like, do you think that Nintendo knows what fun is better than these other people, or do you think they actually do something else?
Well, you go ahead, Michael. You first.
I think that Nintendo has such creators and also management who are like, we have to do something new. Like, constantly, they're always thinking about what's new, what can we do new. If we're doing an old thing, how can we make it feel new? Do something new with it. Like, no matter what, I think it's also money. Like, they have a loyal fan base who will buy all their games. But I feel like with Nintendo, I think it's a difference of mentality, where they are like, we have to constantly put something new and try new things, or we will stagnate as a company and die. I think that is what I think Nintendo's mentality is. And go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head, but just to expand on that, basically, they said over and over again that they're not focusing on the best graphics, they're not focusing on the latest hardware, they're focusing on making everybody a gamer. So basically, they're not willing to pump all the money into the best graphic games or the best console. We could just take a look at the Wii and the Wii U, right? That in of itself is a huge departure from regular console games. They're willing to try to innovate, they're willing to try to bring in new tech, they're willing to try new ways of interacting with video games because they want to expand, well, not only expand, but make games enjoyable and playable for a lot of people. In my opinion, Nintendo has a lot of faults, but one of their best character traits is that they're not so beholden to just making money. They're willing to take risks in order to see whether or not certain innovations work. And because of that, I think like for every, like, Kirby games are great. There were some Kirby games that were not as great, kind of like how Zelda is also great overall, but there were certain Zelda games that just weren't all that great. But because they're willing to put themselves out there, they stumble upon diamonds a lot more than other companies that don't.
And one diamond I just remember was Paper Mario.
Oh yeah,
that is a amazing game that they decided to go 100%, like a 180 from their normal Mario games, where you're always like running around doing stuff, to let's give a battle system to Mario. Like, what? no one would have ever thought that.
I mean, the only problem is, no, go on. Sorry.
And then it just opened up a new world. Then that was the rest I was going to say. Go, Alex.
Oh, well, like, I mean, the fault in that one is that they pivoted. Like, they always try to pivot with a brand new kind of method of gameplay, which I appreciate the mentality of. But Paper Mario, in my opinion, the last good one was probably 1,000-Year Door for the GameCube.
Oh,
because
I agree.
after that, the Paper Mario series the mechanic kept changing, and they weren't really good mechanics. Like Sticker Star for the DS, and like Origami King that came out for the Switch. Like it turned into like more of a puzzle game than anything else. But about Nintendo, like, aside from their dinosaur logic of online gameplay, like, are you saying essentially that they have an indie company mindset, but they have a AAA budget?
I think so. I feel like that is almost what we're getting to. Because, I mean, to be honest, when we think of some games that they have, like Pokemon, they're still stuck on, like, what we said, like the COD mindset. Pokemon is essentially the same as it was, but they've tweaked a couple things, made it look prettier.
Can we really say that Pokemon is Nintendo, though? Because aren't they a separate studio that's working for Nintendo?
I know that they're like Game Freak and like under the Pocket Monster brand, and yeah, it's like, what, God, it's like what kind of partnership is it? It's still a first party. Is it a first party or a second party game? I think it's second party.
Maybe.
Like it's not underneath like Nintendo actually making it, but they're an exclusive company to them.
Yeah, they're a company founded by Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures.
Yeah, Creatures, yeah.
I think
so. Yeah.
Well, sorry,
Go ahead.
but I think
no.
Yeah. I think Nintendo does give a lot of leeway to their branch companies or subsidiaries. They go like, here, just go for it because of that mentality we spoke of earlier. But that also kind of makes it so that those companies, if they don't really see the need to change, they don't really change, a la Pokemon all the way up to like Sword and Shield. But yeah, just to go back really quick to what you were talking about, Alex, about whether or not Nintendo is basically an indie game with a AAA budget. I think Nintendo is a weird mixture of indie and corporate. They definitely are willing to take the risk, and they're definitely trying out new things, but they're very much so corporate in that they kind of stick with certain things. They're very, very, on the legal aspect of everything, Nintendo is an absolute demon when it comes to their IP. It's ridiculous. I think one of the Smash tournaments weren't officially recognized by Nintendo at all. I unless they did so recently, but it was
they did really recently.
Yeah, it was not sanctioned by Nintendo for a super long time. And whether or not we should to even get into the topic of emulation or fan-made video games that uses Nintendo IP, they will come after you really hard. So it's weird. Nintendo's weird. I like them for certain things, but other things, like you said, online, they are absolutely archaic online, which doesn't make any sense to me. They have so many good examples from even Xbox has a good online presence, but it's weird. Nintendo's a weird lad.
I mean, Nintendo essentially, if other indie companies had Nintendo's corporate mentality, other indie companies might do the exact same thing. It's just that a lot of indie companies don't have that budget to hire lawyers and crack down on people who use their IP.
I mean, yes and also no, because you also have other AAA developers and producers who have the money to have lawyers and go after people who make mods. who change up their IPs in certain ways, who utilize their IPs, like even for fan-made videos, that don't get sued up the wazoo, who don't get a shower of cease and desist letters. But like, it's weird. It's kind of weird, in my opinion, at the very least. From the way I see it, it's a little bit too much. But yeah, I mean, Nintendo's great. I hope they keep doing what they're doing aside from the whole legal and online aspect. But yeah.
Honestly, the way I feel about Nintendo is sort of about how I feel with Quentin Tarantino. It's like he makes some damn good movies, but the director's a little bit weird.
Are you talking about his foot fetish?
Nah, all. But like,
just him. Just him.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I really like the stuff he produces, but or like what Nintendo produces, but the stuff around like the corporate idea of Nintendo is a little bit iffy, especially with emulation. Like, the problem with emulation with Nintendo, yeah, sure, I understand the fact as it's like, oh, hey, if you don't own a game, you wouldn't download a car, would you? But like, it's, what's the word called? It's like, you can't play their old games aside from emulation. And I'm not talking about like the classics of like Super Mario Brothers and stuff like that. Like, stuff like, how would you be able to play Crone? Well, there are some remakes.
Mother 3.
Nintendo 64 games, essentially.
Yeah, Mother's 3. Like, that's a great example. And a lot of Nintendo 64 games. Like, these games that we can't really play, how else are we going to play them? But, and also, like, when they're shutting down the 3DS store, I think, sometime soon. Mm-hmm. And, like, there's a lot of 3DS games that aren't on newer consoles. There's no other way to play them. So, the corporation around Nintendo, that sucks. But, like, imagine a Nintendo Game Pass. Like, that would sell like hotcakes. Like,
definitely.
Because like I can just be on my Switch and play all these classics. Like, they have a wealth and a fucking library of all these games that no one can play aside from emulation.
Yeah, no one's going to go back and find the Nintendo 64 cartridge, which you aren't sure will work unless you blow into it, and find a working Nintendo 64 to be able to play that game. Like, no one has the time or money for that.
Yeah, I remember doing that whole song and dance where you like blow into your cartridge, put it in, it gets stuck on the title screen. You turn it off, you take it out, blow it again. But
blowing doesn't even supposed to work, actually. Anyway.
Yeah,
it's not supposed to, but people still did it.
It's
if anything,
it's
dangerous to the cartridge.
Yeah, but we were kids. We were like, what, less than 10? We didn't know any better, really.
Also, pretty sure that was an urban myth, which we can't have anymore due to Googling. But like, it's just one kid on the playground being like, I did this and it worked, and other kids are like, oh my god, this guy's a genius.
And that spread like wildfire.
Yeah, and then apparently we've been doing it wrong this entire time because our moisture breaks the metal. So,
oh god, do you remember the playground rumors of being able to find Mew in the original Pokemon? It's underneath a truck or something.
Oh yeah.
The problem is the truck exists. Like, that's actually next to the SS Anne boat, and like, I still remember the method of getting to it. Like, you need to get the cut HM, lose to one trainer so you black out so the SS Anne doesn't leave, and then you keep progressing until you have a badge that can handle a level 30 Pokemon. You trade with one friend with a Pokemon that has Surf. No, you get the badge that allows you to use Surf, and then you trade a Pokemon that has Surf, and then you go back to the SS Anne, go on Surf and then go right, and then there's a next screen, there's a truck. So I was just like mind boggled about like, there's some nuggets of truth to this. Granted though, it doesn't do shit. You're supposed to use strengths on the truck to move it so that Mew's underneath it, but I mean, whatever. You can get Mew by doing some other kind of glitch like missing no.
That was one of the awesome things about childhood and not having access to the internet. It's all these like, what if this is true? What if this rumor is true? And then like you find out some of it isn't true, but some of it is absolutely true, like missing no. I remember the
Yeah.
first time I got Missing Note. I was so afraid it was going to wreck my video game. But yeah, no, those were magical times.
I think the first way you could get Mew through glitching was Pokemon Yellow.
Was it?
Really? I thought you can get
Yeah.
it in red and blue.
Oh, you can.
American.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. I forgot that you can actually get the Pokemon. But I think Pokemon Yellow is where you could get it very early in the game.
Oh. Was it even a strong Pokemon?
No,
It could just learn anything, right?
it
Like
could
a
learn,
Ditto.
and it's essentially like a Ditto, but it was a pretty Ditto.
A pretty
Yeah.
Ditto.
A pretty 8-bit Ditto.
Yeah, man, I really liked Ditto. I don't know.
Dude, I don't know. You had to waste an entire turn to take over your like opponent's Pokemon, and who knows if the opponent's Pokemon is even good. One time, I duplicated a fucking Metapod. The only thing I do was Harden. It was the dumbest shit in the world.
Dude, I'm not
Yep.
saying it in practicality it's great. I like the idea of Ditto.
The concept of Ditto is great. Concept, great. But
yeah.
probably in the show made it seem more powerful than it actually was in the game.
Oh, do you remember Detective Pikachu and the Dittos?
Oh yeah, and the faces.
Oh god. And the one that can turn into a human. I don't know if this is spoiler alert. I mean, it came out a little while ago, but
I mean, Ditto was always known able to like copy anything.
yeah, but I don't think they were known to copy other humans unless I'm wrong.
Didn't they copy Misty or Ash and it had dumb eyes?
Yeah, essentially, a Ditto that was well trained enough could do it, but like
Okay.
Dittos that didn't do it very often would just keep their face.
God, the face always cracks me up. It's like that Will Smith meme with the tiny face on the big head. Oh man, I love Ditto.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all good stuff. I mean, like, like I don't want to say that games back then were better because it was new to us. Just like games these days, like they're great for kids because they're brand new to them. They don't know the tropes and they don't know the rehashed stories that we already been through. So these games that we consider meh, they're probably like the new Tales games could be like to them our Tales of Symphonia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like to them it's brand new, and even with stunning graphics, it's just when as an older gamer, I guess all I really want is like something catered more towards us, which is why I think I'm not sure if it is nostalgia glasses. You know, like we do want something new and fresh because we're already used to all this stuff that are brand new to the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
But like, does that mean that it's all games these days are bad, or we're just experienced?
Maybe a mixture of both.
It's a mixture of both, definitely. Like the fact that we have already gotten to a point in life where we've heard so many different stories. We are able to be wowed by a story. Back then, unless you were an avid reader, which I definitely wasn't as a child, at least the more complicated books, that when I played a video game, it was experiencing a new story, a new twist. But then now I've read so much. I've gone through mangas, animes, light novels, books, that I can kind of start predicting what comes next.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, tropes.
Oh,
Gotta love the tropes.
I was like talking to Derek a couple of days ago about like, it's really hard for me to get into a new game now. Like, even if it got rave reviews, like I know that Control is there, and I mean, what else did people rave about that wasn't an indie game? I mean, Control is Control an indie game? I want to say yes.
I don't think it's an indie game.
Second party then? Double A game? Because Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice is a double A game.
It may be a AA game. I don't know who the developer is actually.
The only person I know that played it was Michael. Like, how was Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice?
It was a trip. It was definitely something that I felt was a really unique and enriching experience. It's a game I would recommend people to play, but at the same time, it is not for everyone, for sure.
Did it hook you? Like, did it make you want to keep playing after like maybe an hour or two? I also know it's a short game, so that's probably half the game. Anyway.
I think it did definitely make me want to keep playing, but also at the same time, there's other things in my life that keep me from just sitting down and playing a game until the end, essentially. So I had to stop, but I did feel like I wanted to go back. I wanted to know what was happening next. And I think that was what makes a great game. Like, it makes you want to just continue playing. But on that topic, are there games that did hit that nostalgia thing for you?
Recently?
Just in general. Just like, I feel like we've been bashing on games that haven't hit that nostalgia or that aren't innovation. But what is a game I would think is hits that nostalgia trick, or maybe even took it a level further than what you remembered?
I think, well, does it have to be like a series or does it have to be like a brand new IP?
It doesn't matter. Like, is there a game that did that for you?
Yeah. Recently I got Shantae and the Seven Sirens and I beat that in a weekend.
What kind of game is that?
It's a Metroidvania, and you slowly get power-ups throughout the game, and I think like it hits that little dopamine checklist of like, oh hey, here we go, like I can slowly get stronger with this and other kind of stuff. I also played Devil May Cry 5 recently that like I just kept playing over and over again. I think it's because like it was just that non-stop action. Like, sure, the storyline I might be like whatever about, but the problem with me and new RPGs is that if I don't care because I heard the story before, then there's not enough action for me to stay interested with. Devil May Cry 5 was just non-stop action, pretty much, with story bits in between. And if I didn't really care about the story, hey, there's the gameplay. While,
that's
Shantae
fair.
just sort of hit everything.
Doom was the same way, I feel, for a lot of people. Like, story-wise, who cares? But you got to use big guns and shoot things.
Yeah, and it's just non-stop. Like, boom, boom, next area, boom, boom. Like, maybe it's because if I don't care about the story, at least I can just turn my brain off with the gameplay. But if it's like the gameplay is like in between like 45-minute cutscenes, which I played the demo of Triangle Strategy, and I was like, they're still talking. Like, holy shit. How are they still talking? And then I finally get to play, and I'm like, all right, I can't stay interested in this, because if they talk about stuff that I don't care about for long periods of time, and the gameplay is meh, no. If the storyline is really good and the gameplay is meh, I can stick with it. If the gameplay is really good and the story is meh, I can stick with it. But if one of those two are meh, or both of them are meh, I'm going to give up so quickly.
Really quick, two things. I'm playing through Doom Eternal right now on the Xbox Game Pass, and I gotta say, just having the opposite of all the talking and it's just non-stop shooting for 30 minutes tires me out really quickly. Oh my gosh. There was this one level which took 40 minutes and it's just non-stop walking around shooting things, and I just couldn't. Second, what was the second one I wanted to talk about? Quick, what was the last thing you were talking about, Alex?
If the gameplay is meh and the story's meh, I get bored really easily.
Do you guys ever do the whole owl from Legend of Zelda, the Nintendo 64 thing, where you just mash A to pass the text as quickly as possible because you just don't care anymore?
I only do that with games I already played. So I'm a mild completionist to an extent. Like, if I can do it, I'll do it. Which is why games like Xenoblade Chronicles is so hard for me, because like each of the towns have like 50 side quests that you're gonna be like, all right, well, I see the quest, I can technically do the quest, and then I spend an hour in a town not progressing story, and I just hate my life.
Yeah,
I can't skip dialogue because like let's take what's a game channel that does that? Like let's take Game Grumps for example. If Aaron didn't just, because they're trying to be funny at the same time, but if they're a brand new game and like there's mechanics inside the dialogue that you sort of need to pay attention to, otherwise you're gonna not play the game as well. That's why I don't want to miss. I don't like mashing through stuff because if I do miss something that helps me later on, that's gonna suck.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also agree on the whole they have to try to be funny while they're playing it, so they don't really pay attention. It's slightly infuriating. But
that's because we already played the game and we read the stuff.
Some of them, what they play, I've never played before, but that's besides the point. I think for me personally, I do kind of want to get the gist of what they're talking about, so I kind of stick with it. But after the first couple of cutscenes or first couple of areas where there's just dialogue, and I notice a certain trend where they're just talking, and it doesn't really seem to be going by really fast. They just want to convey an idea. I start getting into this habit of like when the text box comes in, I always on the option put instant text or really, really fast text. So it all just shows up on the screen. I glance over it, look at a couple of keywords, and I just skip. And...
Dude, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I can't do that. It's like I want to make sure I know everything. At least the first playthrough. Second playthrough, I agree with Alex. Like, you skip things because you already read this once. But the second time, the first time, I'm just like, I want to know. I want to be invested because I'm taking my time to play this game.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't do this for every single game, but if it's something that doesn't really catch my fancy, like the sentences are a little bit awkward or the conversation itself is a little bit awkward, to me at least, I just go, okay, I can't really stand them talking 30 sentences each. I just kind of want to, they're talking about this town, there's this important character, skip, because it didn't hook me in. I think that's the main problem for me. If I don't feel a connection with the characters, if I don't feel a connection with the story or their conversation, it's almost like I'm forcing myself to sit down in a conversation with two people that I have no interest in. And it's very boring for me.
Projecting a little bit there?
Yeah,
no, okay.
Two people right there.
Well, okay, fine. Remember, there's 3 people here. John may not be here with us physically, but he's here in spirit.
Oh, okay.
Where's the A button? No. You guys are great. Dude, I wouldn't be talking with you guys if I thought you guys were
we
boring.
understand.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just pulling your leg.
I know.
I can't. Like, the only times I skip like that, and I think that this might be the type of games that you're skipping on anyway, is also like if they're voice acted. Like, that times I do skip. Well, like, not even really skip. I just read really quickly and I keep going because like they're just talking and I already know what they're going to say. So like that's when I press the A button. But with other games, like even in action games, I can't skip the dialogue. It's sort of like watching a movie and then just skipping to like the action scenes. It's like I'm like Michael, it's a story. And I might be a little bit angry that I'm wasting time on a story, but I still wouldn't skip through it because like I'm in this world and I'm part of this world, which is what the game's supposed to do. I should stick with it. Or not stick with it, as in, like, I should just read and know what's going on at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you don't get me wrong. I hope you don't think that I just skip through it and
go, not at all.
What am I supposed to do? But yeah,
if I'm gonna spend the time to be, like, playing in this world, I should at least know what the world's about. Like, I tried out a little bit of Castlevania Lords of Shadow, and the storyline's not the best. But, like, I still go through it, even though I know that, like, oh, this is just him getting revenge or him trying to save someone. Let's just go on with it. But I still wouldn't skip through it, though. Because even if it's a meh book, there could be nuggets of good scenes. And if I gotta spend my time playing this, I don't want to miss that.
Right. I think I don't know. I just want to emphasize that I'm not really like ignoring a vast majority of the game, if that makes any sense. The way
Is this more for the listeners or is this more for you?
I don't know, I just want to I don't want you to think that I'm just ignoring 90% of what's on the screen, just picking out keywords and just pressing skip.
Oh yeah, no.
I tried to.
We don't think you're doing that.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know
If
whether or
anything-
not you got that, so I was just kind of trying to clarify.
If anything, you're probably just doing the same thing I'm doing, where it's just you're just talking, like maybe voice acted. I'm not sure, but like after a certain point, you sort of know, like especially with the amount of games we played, we know where the story's going.
No, not even that. I'm like picking up on the whole themes, everything about it. It's just some games just take an excruciating amount of time in order to try to set even a portion of that up, and it's kind of like you guys are saying this in 30 sentences when you can literally say it in like 10. It's
Oh yeah,
kind of what I'm saying.
It's like Alex when he talked about triangle strategy. Yes, it is a very lore heavy game. And after you get through the demo, you're like, I need a break because they just threw lore at you for 30, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard, even for me. Like, I think that was something they probably should have worked on.
Hell, Tactics did a better job in less time. Like, come on,
Yeah.
y'all.
The Final Fantasy Tactics, original game, threw you in the battle at the beginning of the game and showed you how to play the game and also showed you the story of the game without actually like just going through dialogue forever.
Yeah, some books which kind of feels as if they're adding a lot to it to just sound smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I get sometimes. But anyway, we're a little bit past an hour, so if you guys feel like this is a good spot, we should try wrapping it up.
One thing I didn't hear from you, Derek, was there any game that hit that sweet spot for you, for of nostalgia and to hit that sweet spot or improve and bring it to a new threshold for you?
Oh, hold on, give me a second to think about this really quick.
Yeah, while you think about it, like for me, I know everyone already heard me talk about this game like crazy, but like Stardew Valley, like the old Harvest Moon games for me was something that I enjoyed and loved, and Stardew Valley took those old games and brought it to a new level, and that's something that I think Harvest Moon used to be that sweet spot for me. Now Stardew Valley hit that sweet spot and elevated as my new like threshold.
Which is why I think like, when we the kids that like those games are now old enough to know what they liked about it and make games around it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I already gushed about this in the beginning of the show and I didn't beat it yet, but you all should try Tunic. It is like, oh my god, it's like an old Zelda game, but with so many like different new elements. Like there's a Dark Souls element where if you die you lose some money, so you have to go back to your spirit to actually go get the money back. It's like they put you in the middle of the world with no story lead or anything like that. You have no idea what's going on, that you have to sort of decipher through adventuring the world. And like I haven't, at least not yet, I haven't heard any dialogue. It's all just, you sort of have to figure this out yourself. And
cool.
It's so fresh. It's like, yeah, sure, I've played games like that a long time ago, but I think it's because I haven't played that type of game in a long time that it just feels fresh again with modern elements.
All right. Well, Tunic, I'll definitely put on my wish list. And then if anyone's listening, Stardew Valley, if you haven't played yet, I highly recommend you put that on your wish list too.
This may sound a little bit sad, but I haven't played anything recently that kind of scratched that nostalgia itch.
Play Tunic.
Yeah,
I'm being dead serious.
Right,
like you will love it.
Right, and I'll definitely put that on my list. I'm trying to make my way through certain things right now, but I don't think I've done anything or played anything recently that scratched an itch. Like, I talk about this with our cousin Ed. But Ed and I are both like, man, it would be great if there was a game that was like for MMORPGs, like WoW, or if it was like for something else, like this other game. But we're constantly on a search, but we haven't really come across anything that necessarily scratched that itch for us. So I have an itch that's not fulfilled. It's a little. Oh, I'm sad
Well,
now.
all those game developers out there, you better get on it. Scratch Derek's itch.
Yes, please. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a not really an answer, but I can't think of anything that's really been able to scratch an itch for me. Not just yet.
Dude, same. Because like, if I don't have that itch scratched, I just sort of go back to like arcadey games, like Overwatch or like beat 'em ups. Like it's just sort of mindless. Like it's like eating a bag of chips. You just sort of just keep eating it. But sometimes like I have yet to see like a new restaurant pop up that I'm like, ooh, like this is a good place. I need to go here more often. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These days, if I don't see that restaurant, I just sort of go for the bag of chips because, well, it's there and it's good enough.
It's tried and true. Yeah, okay. So not really substance for me to end
I
on.
mean,
But,
that's completely fair. Like,
I think that just shows the current state of what we were talking about. Like, you know, it's not that like retro games were better, but maybe we just did grow up and we're so used to the same stuff every day. Everything looks like a bag of chips.
maybe. I still have yet to play any of the old Resident Evil remakes. Maybe
Like 2 and Nemesis?
yeah, maybe they'll scratch that third person survival horror itch for me. Who knows? I haven't really met anything since Dead Space 1 that really kind of fulfilled that itch.
Dude, you should look up Callisto Effect or is it Callisto Effect? It's from the same makers at least it's heavily inspired by Dead Space. I think it's the same makers. I think.
Oh, is that the new one?
It looks so good. Yeah, it looks so good.
Oh, I think I've heard about it. I also want to try Evil Within. Maybe that'll do the trick a little bit.
ooh, definitely try Evil Within. Evil Within is something that I think is one of those horror games, but definitely went with their own direction.
Yeah.
Did you?
The storyline is a little bit confusing.
Uh-huh.
You might have to play the DLC to sort of understand it. But I really enjoyed my time playing Evil Within.
Did you guys play 1 and 2?
I didn't play 2.
I did both, and the first one was definitely more memorable
Horror
because it
driven?
was the first time, but the second one definitely was interesting and definitely did also scratch that itch as well. It wasn't a disappointment, let's say.
Interesting. So, okay, awesome. I guess I have a couple of games to check out. Tunic and Evil Within. Got a recommendation.
And Evil Within, both of them are currently on sale. You could get 1 and 2 for less than $15.
They're also both available on the Xbox Game Pass.
Oh,
$1
perfect.
for 3 months.
So yeah, maybe I'll try those out. We'll see. I'll let you guys know.
All right, sounds good.
All right. So, anybody else have anything more to say? We are running up on like an hour 20, so it's about a good time.
We are good. Thank you for today, guys.
Oh, awesome. Thank you
Problem.
guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and John, you are here in spirit. Thank you too.
Fuck you, John.
Hey. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for the second episode. We'll be back. Hope you guys have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.